Hello, this is the second part of my studying stream dedicated to the book Beyond Good and Evil by Friedrich Nietzsche. And today I'm going to read the book and talk about it, trying to understand what Nietzsche wanted to say. But before, let me recite the first part, which I read yesterday. So as I promised, I memorized this part. And now I'm going to show you like whatever, doesn't matter. Okay, now I'm just going to read the part which I was reading yesterday and which I spent 3 hours analyzing. Preface. Supposing that truth is a woman, what then? Is there no ground for suspecting that all philosophers, insofar as they have been dogmatists, have failed to understand women? That terrible seriousness and clumsy importunity with which they have usually paid their addresses to truth have been unskillful and unseemly methods for winning a woman? Certainly she has never allowed herself to be won, and at present, every kind of dogma stands with sad and discouraged mien, if indeed it stands at all, for there are scoffers who maintain that it has fallen, that all dogma lies on the ground, nay more, that it is at its last gasp. But to speak seriously, there are good grounds for hoping that all dogmatizing in philosophy, whatever solemn, whatever conclusive and decided airs it has assumed, might have been only a noble pluralism and tyrannism. And probably the time is at hand when it will be once and again understood what actually sufficed for such imposing and absolute philosophical edifices that the dogmatists have hitherto reared. Perhaps some popular superstition of immemorial time, like soul superstition, or like soul superstition, which in the form of subject has not, or ego superstition has not yet ceased doing mischief. Perhaps some play upon words, a deception on the part of grammar, or an audacious generalization of very restricted, very personal, very human, all too human facts. So this was the part which I analyzed yesterday, and it took me maybe 20 minutes to memorize this. And now I'm going to continue. I'm going to read the next part and talk about it, hopefully for a couple of hours. My goal is here not to give you a summary of the Nietzschean philosophy or tell you how I understand the philosophy. This is a studying stream. For me, studying is the process which I really enjoy. The goal is not to memorize what I study or to gain some knowledge. The goal just to focus on the process and get a lot of fun and positive emotions and just to do the work. And so I'm gonna read the book slowly and talk about it a lot. So in my stream, I'm not concerned with like, explaining everything or telling you, about something that you don't know. I'm concerned with developing my stream of consciousness, with developing my thinking. If you want to do the same, you may just watch me for a couple of hours and try to do it on your own, since actually the meaning of this stream, again, for me, it's not giving something to you, it's not teaching you, it's just studying. I want to show you how I study language, how I study philosophy, to make you understand what's really like is studying for me, since I'm in this business for more than a decade, and I study not just languages, philosophy, psychology. I study how to study, and this is one of the best ways which I discovered so far. So when you take some piece of information which you want to study, you focus your attention on it and you try to maintain the meaningful stream of consciousness for as long as you can. So if it's a short piece of text, just 5 sentences, it's not your goal to make it clear. It's not also your goal to make it, foggy or whatever, obscure, vague. Your goal is just to focus your stream of consciousness and keep it on this short piece of information for as long as you can. And that's what I'm doing. So I'm trying to, okay, this is the preface. I'm going to read it slowly. I'm going to take each sentence and think about it for half an hour or maybe for an hour, or how long I can do that. And then you see, I can memorize it easily. I can think about it easily without actually having the text. So I might go for a walk, keep all this in mind and analyze each paragraph, each idea in depth, but just by thinking without being distracted by anything else. So, but enough for an introduction. Let's go on and read the book. So I start here, all to human facts. Once again, the summary of this part. So Nietzsche basically talks about dogmatizing in philosophy and says that no way. It's like all your dogmas, they're no longer relevant. Whatever you propose, it's no longer make any sense. And of course, all philosophy is dogma. Dogma and skepticism is also a kind of dogma. So what do with that? What to do about that? He doesn't tell you, you shouldn't dogmatize. He tells you this is the real state of affairs in philosophy. People claim that there is some kind of knowledge, that we know something about the world and that we can use language to describe the real world. But Nietzsche says no. All what you know is just dogmatizing. You take certain criteria, you describe the world according to these criteria, but it's not everything. The truth, which you claim this is the absolute truth, this is something that everybody must agree upon, or whatever. It's all nonsense. There's no truth. There's no certainty about what we know and what we don't know. And the world, you may talk about it, you may suggest your ideas, or your you may develop your views, but I, from my point of view, may propose something different. And if you suggest an idea, so if you say that, okay, we do science, let's suppose that you're Francis Bacon, you say we do real science, and there's a huge group of people, hundreds and thousands of people, who really buy this idea of science, or millions of people, or whatever, billions, and they say, oh, this is science, this is what we do is real science. And I may come and say, no, it's not real science, this is real science. And that's what's going on in Nietzschean books and this discourse. So basically he says whatever counts as real science, as philosophy, as knowledge, it's all nonsense. Since it's not nonsense per se, it's something that we may use, something that we may apply to interact with each other, but it's never something that is not subject to criticism. Or you may again take any statement about the world and you may reverse it, and you may write books defending your statement, and write books defending the reverse statement. And what is really true, what is really going on, it's almost impossible to say. It's Kantian antinomies, or aporis. I don't know actually the English translation, but the world is infinite. It's the proposition of Kant, and he goes on and proves that the world is infinite in 2 paragraphs. And then he says the next paragraph, he says the world is finite. And then he goes on and proves that world is finite in 2 pages. Well, then you may say, well, something must be true. So one of these proofs is invalid. But Kant says, no, it's both. You may see, if you have certain view, and if you want to prove that it's true, you may use logic and reason and say that it's all true. And it doesn't contradict. you may say that the opposite is true as well, and it also may be true. So there's no just one truth, which is absolute truth. Of course, you may disagree and say, no, like it makes no sense. The world is finite, the world is infinite. Well, go and check out Kantian apores. They're available on the internet. Like they're in his book, The Critique of Pure Reason. You may read them. And by the way, if you want to understand them better, Schopenhauer wrote the book or an article which is called Kantian Critique. And in this article, he basically tried to refute all Kantian like apores according to his view. So he said, no, like Kant actually was playing with words. He didn't prove that the world is finite. He proved that it's infinite, and that's why it's infinite, but it's not finite. And then like everything consists of parts, particles, and another aporia. So like thus everything consists of like the dichotomy between the whole and parts. So is everything a part or is everything the whole? And Kant also like proves in both ways that it's all true. And Schopenhauer says, based on it's like infinite. There's no beginning, no end. When we talk about time, for example, Kant says, well, time started from a certain point, and that's why. There's two paragraphs, and we may like probably will make I'll later go on and read these antinomies or apores, and we'll analyze them like sentence after sentence, trying to show you how Kant thinks and how he makes these controversial statements and proves that one is true and the other is true, even though that they contradict to each other. But anyway, let's go on and read this book. So the philosophy of the dogmatists, it is to be hoped, was only a promise for thousands of years afterwards, as was astrology in still earlier times, in the service of which probably more labor, gold, acuteness, and patience have been spent than on any actual science hitherto. We owe to it and to its superterrestrial pretensions in Asia and Egypt the grand style of architecture. All right, so philosophy of dogmatists, it is to be hoped, was only a promise for thousands of years afterwards. A promise. Yeah, you dogma, like you say something, you develop your philosophy, you believe in something, and then even if it's not true, doesn't matter, since you may come up with an idea, you may believe that it's true, and just by trying to prove that it's true, you may develop very sophisticated tools, like in language. And that's why it's always important to have arguments and to try to refute your own knowledge, like this scientific way of thinking. So you don't try to prove something, like you came up with an idea and you try to prove it and show that it's true. But scientific way of thinking is more about, you came up with an idea and you try to disprove it, you try to say, no, it's wrong, look, it's wrong. And you can't do that. I mean, if it survives, if it stands all your attempts to disprove it, that probably must be true. And if not, if you may refute it, or you may okay, I believe that there's free will, right? I may believe that it's true. And most people, at least in my experience, in my environment, they'll believe that there's free will. So did they actually try to disprove it? Like I spent a couple of years trying to disprove that there's no free will. And I did it not by communicating with people, but basically by reading books, trying to analyze the subject, the idea. And eventually I disproved it to myself. Not, of course, when it took me a couple of years of serious studies, like from Schopenhauer to Nietzsche, basically. Yeah, and there was going to be, in this book, there's going to be many attacks on free will. So later, like in paragraph 20, 21, I guess he starts his analysis of free will, and we'll get to it later. But the idea is that you try to disprove something, And you see that if you can do that, like it's not worth to be taken seriously. If you can't do that, well, you just see, you may say this is knowledge. But if you can't do that, it doesn't mean that there's somebody else who can take this idea and disprove it. And that's why arguing, always trying to understand what is like the real knowledge. For example, I'm a determinist and I believe in determinism. And whenever I tried to disprove determinism, I failed. So there was no way for me to disprove it. And most of the time, when I say disprove, prove, I basically was reading lots of books dedicated to the subject. And I tried to think about it on my own. So I tried to, okay, like free will, and you sit and think about it for 10 hours, or write some articles trying to formulate your thoughts as clearly as possible, and then try to see how you think. Why do you believe in something, or why you don't believe? So, and as I said, I tried to refute determinism, but it was impossible. So I didn't find anything anywhere. So on the internet, in libraries, notebooks, whatever I was reading, when somebody tried to disprove determinism, everybody failed. Like quantum mechanics, all these courses of lectures on YouTube, wherever. Like no way. So nobody actually may point out some evidence and say this is proves that determinism is false. But you can't disprove that free will as well is false. So it's a matter of belief. See, it's not a matter of proof or disproof. It's not a matter of, no, it's like in Kant. So the world is finite, the world is infinite. If you want to believe that it's finite, like good luck. If you want to believe if it's infinite, you may do that, and you may basically convince yourself, and you may convince others as well as you want, that this is true, and this is going to be your truth, something that you discovered on your own, something that you know because of something else. So you was like somehow you discovered this question, like whether truth is, whether the world is infinite or finite, and you started thinking about it, and you figured out that it's finite, and then you may say, this is my knowledge, this is how I know that. And you may like tell the whole sequence of events and this train of thought which led you to this conclusion. But once again, if I want to believe that there's like the world is infinite, I also may tell you some ideas and the steps and arguments, and I may argue that the world is infinite, and it's going to be as valid as arguments proposed by people who argue that the world is finite. See, there's no like one objective truth. If you want to believe that, the world will just show you that this is true. If you want to believe that, the world will show you that this is true. Well, sometimes it depends on, do you really want to believe in something? Yeah, but with this determinism. So once again, it's like you believe. For example, I'm more a skeptic. So I say I am a determinist, but actually I don't mean like there's variety of. So I like determinism. I like this idea that everything is predetermined, and that the future, the past is already it's already happened in some way. And it does, like it's not happened, since there's no future right now, there's present. And whatever I know, I only, my knowledge is all it's backwards. So I know everything about the past. Like what I know, my knowledge is all about the past. Maybe I may know something about the future. So I may tell you that in next hour, I'm going to talk and describe like whatever is here in this book. I'm going to talk about this book for the next hour. And it's like true future. But what exactly am I going to say? I don't know. But it's a matter of choice. So a matter of choice is, you must say it's free will, like pure free will. So I may choose to believe in determinism, or I may choose to believe in free will. And this was William James' question. So before he asserted that free will exists, he said, like, there's no way to prove it or disprove it, and I choose to believe in free will, and this is the first act of my free will. And well, I am the opposite of William James, and I say there is no way to prove or disprove it, and I choose to believe in determinism, and this is the first act of the predetermined condition. So see, we're here on a different sides. This is my like natural way of looking at the world, and it was developed. I mean, I was reading this worldview for many years, and I have many arguments which I use for convincing myself that this is the superior way of looking at reality when you think that everything is predetermined. On emotional level, it's certainly way more powerful. So whenever you have free will, that actually your emotions are unstable, since you may, well, it's hard to tell. Like I remember, it's my experience. I remember myself when I speculated about past and future all the time. So I was thinking, if I had changed that, I would have a different life. And I was thinking, why did I do such a stupid thing? Why did I say that? Or why did I, went there? Whatever. So, and then, you have some regrets and lots of doubts and shame and whatever, nervousness, guilt, fear about the future. So see, determinism, it helps you to cope with fear, not just to cope with fear. You basically you make friends with fear. So you understand that fear is a ally, so you may use it, and you're no longer afraid of the future. That's like when you really put determinism in your mind, in your consciousness. So when you allow it to grow and become a central idea of your worldview, there's no fear of the future. So whatever is going to happen in the future, it's already happened. You're not afraid. And also it helps you to focus on particular things, since you don't need to, when you do something, like I'm doing this studying stream. So I'm sitting at the computer, reading Beyond Good and Evil, making comments, just talking about myself, talking about what I'm doing, what I know, and analyzing my own stream of consciousness. And I know that it's predetermined, and I'm going to sit there maybe for 300 hours, maybe for 1,000 hours, just doing that. And I don't have these extra superfluous impulses, like probably I need to do something else. I need to go and, I need to go for a walk now instead of like recording the stream, or I need to read another book. Why am I reading this book? Why wouldn't I take some like Kantian Critique of Pure Reason, or Schopenhauer and aphorisms, like the wisdom of life, like, or Sextus Empiricus, outlines of Pyrrhonism. So why don't I take these books and take this one? And I may just, engage in thinking and think about it endlessly, since there's no reason. But then I think, no, it's like determined. This is what I decided to do. There was a certain reason. Well, maybe I don't understand 100% what is the reason which led me to analyze this book. Oh, I had certain, first of all, it was kind of intuitive, since this is one of the most profound books which I ever encountered in my literature studies. And I've read like hundreds of books. I mean, philosophical, just hundreds of famous philosophical books. I I probably read even like not thousands, but anyway. So uh, it was one of the most influential book in my life. So I read it many times, like 10 times. That's why I decided, well, why I just why wouldn't take it and analyze it in like depth, just sentence after sentence after sentence after sentence. And it's not just the purpose of this stream, as I said at the beginning. It's not just analyzing the book. It's more about talking, like stream of consciousness, using the book as a kind of orienteer to focus my stream of consciousness and see what I'm going to say. I have lots of experience in studying, literature, philosophy, and probably this book may help me to unlock this experience, whatever. Okay, philosophy of the dogmatists, it is hoped, was only a promise for thousands of years afterwards. So it was like, all dogmatizing in philosophy. Even though it, according to Nietzsche, caused lots of harm to human civilization, and people were enslaved by some ideologies and were doing certain things. But he says, it's not a big deal. See, we just, as humanity, we just started. So there's so many amazing things. And even though there was and he makes an example, he uses astrology and says that, it wasn't a real science. He compares it with actual science, saying it's like so much patience, labor, gold, acuteness, like was spent on astrology. And he says, wow, why we spend so much time, like instead of studying real science, we, study some movements. Yeah, but it had like astrology became astronomy, and then we like learned lots of things about the universe. So it probably was useful. And yeah, but like, it was useful to some degree, but there are so many superstitions, and there are still lots of people who believe in astrology. Like Nietzsche was writing in 19th century, and in science it was, considered as something completely ridiculous to believe in astrology, that, planets, their position, influence. If you were born at certain, month and day and time, you are going to experience certain things, and this is what you're going to experience, and some of these predictions is basically nonsense. It was nonsense, like, in times of Nietzsche, but now it's very popular. People make lots of money, just by convincing other peoples that their birth and the place and the planets determine whatever is going on in their lives. Yeah, and I guess, I know very little about astrology. Maybe it makes sense for some people. I don't want to say that, all astrology is useless and stupid. Maybe there are some real things, but most of the time, what we see, it's like charlatans, deceiving, naive, gullible, fools, and making money by, pretending that they're. And it was even in early ancient, like Roman period, there was augurs, and they were determining the course of events, the future, by looking at the birds. So it's like a bird flies, and if it flies in a certain way, it's like science. Like it was real science in ancient Roman times. So augurs, they looked at the birds, and they could say, "Oh, birds were flying this way, therefore you are gonna, marry this woman, or you are gonna earn like a lot of money, or you are going to be a senator, or whatever." And people believed that, and I guess here they believe in this, self-fulfilling prophecy. When you like believe in something, then you paying attention, you begin to pay attention to certain things which confirm your belief, and then you realize whatever is whatever you believe in. So see, you may just believe that you're a genius. Let's suppose, like, you may believe I'm a genius. I may believe, and I believe that, by the way. So I may say I'm a genius, and then I may look at the reality and find all evidence which confirms my belief, and I may do certain things which actually may make me a genius. So I may study all the time. I may I may do something with my health. I mean, I may eat healthy food. I may exercise to keep my body and keep my brain flexible and strong. Neuroplasticity, all these stuff. Do exercises, uh, develop my memory, develop the quality of my attention, develop my imagination. Write something down, like study other geniuses and see what made them geniuses, and so on. And basically, like, by doing this, I may convince myself further and further that I'm a genius, and at some moment probably I'll like make something genius. That's that's maybe it's not the case. Who knows? But this, like, you may also believe that you're an idiot, right? And you may spend all this time and energy trying to prove yourself that you're an idiot. And you must, but there must be reality, right? There must be something real. So it's not just about beliefs. It's not about your thinking. It's about what is here. So if you're a genius, there must be evidence, right? So in my case, there is an evidence. I'm writing for 10 fucking years, my journals. Read them and see what's going on. Or I'm just, I've wrote like hundreds of poems, and there are like 50 of them which are excellent, I would say. Not in English, unfortunately, in Russian. Yeah, and I wrote lots of books and articles. They're also like fairy tales. They're great. They're just perfect, also in Russian. And that's why I must say I'm a genius. And I also know that I'm a fool, since I recorded so many stupid things here. Like, if you check out my YouTube channels, there are like 1,000 videos, and most of them, they make me shame whenever I look at them. But that's what make me, this neuroplasticity. If you have heard that term, neuroplasticity, it's the best way to boost your neuroplasticity after the age of 25. Like this terrible experience when you feel bad, when you do something, when you make mistake, you have this feeling. So there's cortisol and other hormones which basically make you feel uncomfortable. And in any awkward and embarrassing situation, if you try to use it on like for self-development, for developing your knowledge, it's one of the best tools to boost your neuroplasticity, to make your brain change its make your neurons change its connections and basically transform its structure. So, this feeling helps you actually learn. And you may interpret it in two ways. So you may say, oh, you may record the video like stream of consciousness, like what I'm doing right now. So you may listen to yourself and say, I'm a fucking idiot. I can't say anything meaningful. I can't develop any idea, or my language is terrible. I make mistakes all the time. There are countless fillers. I repeat always, it's like, or I say, all the time, or I repeat like the same what I said before, like 5-10 times, since I can't go on and I can't be consistent. I can't keep track of my, train of thought. Or you may say, and you may complain, and after that, you don't do that. So you may complain and you may have these negative emotions, and then you say, no, it's something stupid. I don't want to do that. Probably I need to read more, or I need to listen more, lectures, or communicate with people. It's going to help me better. Like if you study language, you may say it's better to go to the speaking club and talk to people or watch something instead of like doing self-talk and studying stream, since it makes me feel uncomfortable. But if you subjectively like shift your perception and understanding, you say, this is good, this is what I need to do. Like, I know it makes me feel uncomfortable, it makes me feel awkward, but it simultaneously transforms my brain. And if I do it more and more, eventually I'll learn to avoid all these fillers. I'll learn to speak without mistakes. I learn to be consistent, but I just need to do it more. See, and this is good. This feeling, it feels bad, but it's really good. So it's kind of subjective. Like you have to attach dopamine to this process, and then you just enjoy the process. So you may learn to do what I'm doing, like studying stream, and you may learn language so fast. And neuroplasticity basically is like this tool. So you understand how your brain learns, how you transform your knowledge and your ideas just by making mistakes, analyzing your mistakes, and creating kind of subjective value. So putting subjective value into this process. And if you, of course, my explanation is quite vague. So if you want to learn more about it, you may go on YouTube, find Andrew's Huberman channel. Yeah, I'm just gonna advertise everything here, like what I watch and what I, yeah. Since I watched like how many, for about 20 hours of its lectures or even more, and I basically learned what I said from what I tried to describe now. I learned from him, Andrew Huberman, this guy. So what actually he is doing? He started his podcast at the December of the last year, and as you may see, so those were which I watched. Like he has long podcasts, usually 1 hour and 30 minutes podcasts, and what like here's a neuroscientist, and he records videos once a week, this podcast, and during this week he studies the topic in depth, and he focuses on one topic usually for a month. So he like takes sleep, and he talks about sleep for 90 minutes. Next week he goes on and talks about sleep another 90 minutes. Next week again there's also about sleep. So, and this is the last, I guess, 5. Yeah, this is about focus, but this is about sleep, like four podcasts, like 6 hours about sleep, and then 6 hours about like attention and focusing, how your brain works. And what I described about cortisol and about neuroplasticity, I basically learned from one of these videos. Which one of them? This one. So this one, it's a seventh podcast. Um, it's called Using Failures, Movement, and Balance to Learn Faster. But I guess this one also helps. Like if you want to understand better, you just watch the whole series, like these 4 series about neuroplasticity. Anyway, so what was I talking about? Astrology, right? Astrology, yeah, like real science. Is it science? But Nietzsche complains, like he doesn't complain, but he says something like astrology, like we spent so much energy as humanity developing astrology, and probably if we got rid of all astrologers from the beginning and started studying science in ancient Egypt and developed better tools and logic and whatever, like whatever we have right now, or whatever we had in Nietzsche times, like 19th century. So if we started doing that, by now, by 19th century, we would be like so advanced, but we are still at the very beginning. So you may ask a question like, why people like 2000 years ago, all these things which we know now, computers, phones, TV, radio, whatever, it all could be known 2000 years ago, but people were thinking about something different. So they believed in Zeus, they believed in planets, and it was like common, like, if I were living at that time and I start like Socrates was basically uh, condemned to suicide. Suicide. Yeah, but it was kind of suicide. But anyway, Socrates was condemned to death because he said like Zeus, schmooze. It's like nonsense. Like what's real important ideas and immortal soul, but it's like another dogma. But anyway, so he was like saying something inappropriate in his time, and he was condemned to death. And like Socrates now is taken as the most famous philosopher and like the wisest guy, and he was the wisest guy during his time. But the wisest guy was condemned to death because he didn't believe in Zeus, and he was saying like it's all just bullshit. Just focus on morality, focus on dialectics, focus on justice, focus on whatever was there, justice, honesty, beauty, all these concepts and ideas, soul, right? And yeah, but people didn't listen to him, even though like he was the wisest guy. There were just 20, 30 people who was like, and his influence, so Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, they basically created this academia. So what we now know like academia, there was like real academ. It was a it was a garden in Athens where Plato taught his philosophy. And then now we have academia. It's basically like all these institutions developed after, like basically, uh, let's suppose now I'm talking about like my way of looking at the world, my science, like learning, whatever. I create some kind of ideology, or I may create some kind of, science. It's like the word ideology, science. You may replace them. That's that's okay. So I create some kind of knowledge. So whatever it may be, I write a book, or no, I create some movement. How to like movement. Like school. So we may use any word. So school, like a special school. So I may take an Egyptian word for school, uh, make a new word in English, and then create the whole movement around the school, and use my own methods of studying, and teach people how to study, how to develop their brains, how to develop their memory, attention, imagination, whatever, writing, how to learn to write. And then in next 1,000 years, my like what I'm talking right now, what I'm, like this movement will grow and basically conquer the whole planet. Like now we have all these educational, or organizations and institutes, and now people like more interested in knowledge and science. But again, going back in times of Socrates, they were more interested in astrology, and they were building, like imagine like to build these pyramids in Egypt, like how much power, how much energy we spent on that. So perhaps if we dedicated the same amount of energy and intelligence to study science, we could learn at Egyptian times how to build cars. But there was tyrants, and they didn't want to have this industrial progress. But of course, it's like it's all about it was all predetermined. Of course, we couldn't find any real knowledge back then. There was just ideas, and people tried to develop their ideas, and they didn't care too much about like real science, and didn't care about knowledge too much. They didn't believe in anything. They were so confused about the nature of reality, about their own nature. And now it's a little bit better, but not for everybody. Now we can see, you may do science, you may do all sorts of amazing things, but most people, they just go and work, and they can't do that. They can't. They're totally hopeless, and you can do anything with that. It's like it's the same as teaching animals. So let's go and teach cows like to think, and say, instead of just chewing the grass, you may like think. Imagine you're a cow, and you may think for 50 years, create your own worlds, like linguistic worlds, metaphysical worlds, whatever, and teach other cows, to think and to talk to each other, to describe what's going on in reality. Yeah, it's like teaching. Most humans are still on this level of cows, so they do something, they understand uh, basics, things about the reality, about the society, about everything what surrounds them. But on an intellectual level, it's all like all their intellect is consumed by their will. So they whatever they need to do, they just may think about it, but they don't actually think. So they may just they don't even use language. They don't think about developing their language, developing their intelligence, developing their writing or speaking. What they care about is like how to eat, how to get certain stuff which are required for life, and how to uh, have fun. Probably I don't know. Okay, I'm not cursing here. I'm not trying. I'm not complaining. I'm not trying to put anybody down and say like people are fucking idiots and I'm the smartest guy in the world. And it's I don't care. I mean, I like I understand that there's no difference between me and any other animal. It's not just about people. I mean, what I call consciousness and I myself, I know that this body is just, it's temporary, and everything else, like also kind of, no, it's also me. So the whole bloody world. So I don't want to go on now and talk about this metaphysics. So I guess, but I'll come back probably to it later. Now I just want to continue reading this. Yeah, it took me like for almost an hour to discuss this paragraph, and I didn't say much about the paragraph, but I was talking, trying to think about astrology, why people spend so much time studying astrology and building pyramids and doing all this stuff, whereas they could do science, like real science. But what you say, what do you call real science? That was the problem. Like people argued as math all the time, saying, no, it's like what you call science is not science. What I call science, this is science. And they can't find consensus. And yeah, and still in Nietzsche time, he basically wants to say, no dogma, no dogma. Guys, let's just and without dogma, of course, without a common ideology, without a common worldview, you can't actually do any science. So to do science, you have to agree on certain terms. You have to agree that science is this thing, right? So like whatever we may prove, experiments, this is science. Or you must say, no, this is not science. Science is whatever I say is science. Yeah, that's actually Nietzsche, you know Nietzsche, whatever. Nietzschean way of looking at reality. So what's good? It's what I'm doing. This is good. Whatever else, whatever other people are doing, it's not good. Yeah, and it's very hard. Like you have to have certain consensus, but imagine that you're somebody like Nietzsche or Socrates or any other, sage. So you see that people are dumb. Everybody, nobody wants to learn. So you want to do something with them, but you see simultaneously that it's impossible to do anything with them. Since let's suppose you want to do philosophy and you want to do it with people. So there's your way of doing philosophy. Like for me, like what I'm doing right now. So I'm doing philosophy, and now I'm kind of studying philosophy and doing it and teaching it simultaneously. But we may we may say I may say that to do philosophy you have to understand like this book, Beyond Good and Evil, and to understand this book you have to record your own studying stream for like and spend 1,000 hours like doing what I'm doing. So taking each sentence, going through each paragraph, reading it slowly, talking about it for an hour, uh, reading one page a day, and basically spending like the entire year studying it for 3 hours every day. And then we may talk about the book Beyond Good and Evil. Say, are you crazy? Like, don't I have anything else to do? Yeah, but then see, like when I do that, imagine that we may have a discussion about Nietzsche. And I like to talk about philosophers. I mean, and I spent like thousand hours studying Nietzsche and reading his books, not just Beyond Good and Evil, but all of them. And another 1,000 hours reading Schopenhauerian books and Kantian books. Do you really think that it makes sense for me to talk with you about philosophy if you don't know anything about it, if you haven't read any book. It's like, yeah, it makes sense trying to probably teach you something or explain you something, or just try to persuade you to study it, to really start doing what I'm doing. And so it's impossible to do philosophy together unless we like you know unless we're equal. So when we are equal, when we do the same thing, like if we study philosophy, we may study the same books, or we may do certain, like we may do thinking. So philosophy is not just about studying and reading books, it's also about thinking and writing. So if we decide, okay, let's write one page every day studying philosophy and thinking about philosophy, let's think about philosophy each day for half an hour and write our thoughts. Like, let's be honest. And who wants to do that? Like, I couldn't find, like, I was looking for uh, like this famous phrase, I'm looking for a human. Who said that? I don't remember. Usually they say Diogenes who said that, but it wasn't him. There was another philosopher, a Greek philosopher. So it's like looking for a human, yeah, with a lamp and with a, like, whatever, with a fire uh, in the daytime. So that's what I'm doing, like looking for somebody who really wants to study philosophy. And it's like one of the things, of course, one of the things, but nobody wants to study it. Nobody wants to do the same. People want to, you know, to listen to other people. So when we study philosophy, like those who really want to study philosophy in my environment, there's no such people who want to do philosophy. There are some people who want to study it. They may read some books, or they may watch some courses of lectures where some professor will tell them what is philosophy and explain them, like, certain ideas are developed by certain philosophers. But to do philosophy, this is like doing philosophy. So you go find a book which is like an influential book, and you may how are you going to find it? That's how. So you watch my stream now. If you watch it, you probably may understand what I'm saying. So you take this book, or you take another book which I'm mentioning in my streams. Like, you may take Schopenhauer, The World as a Will and Representation. You may take Kant, his book, The Critique of Pure Reason, or you may take any other, like you may start from Plato and read The Republic, or other dialogues. You may take Aristotle, read Nicomachean Ethics, Sextus Empiricus, Outlines of Pyrrhonism. And then, like, after dedicating 100 hours to a book, just reading. First, of course, it's probably makes sense to read fast. So take the book, you read it in a couple of days, and then you go slowly, analyze each sentence, talk about it, think about it. Then you may say, yeah, now I know. Now we may have a discussion about philosophy and talk about it. Yeah, but this is like real study. And I mean, in science, for example, the whole idea of science, like, what is science? So you may say, this is science, right? Physics. And you have to know all these ideas developed by physicians in 20th century. So you have to know specific theory of relativity, general theory of relativity. You have to understand gravity, whatever, gravitation. And then you know physics. You say, man, but do you know how much time it takes to study physics? Like, it's a couple of months. Seriously. Like, to understand basics, what they teach at universities, it takes a couple of months. That's all. You spend a couple of months, like, studying 10 hours a day, thinking about it, reading there. And you, of course, you won't be able to understand everything, but you'll know, like, you'll develop your level to the, like, you'll be able to understand physics as a graduate, student from like who graduated from university, since they don't study anything at universities. Like most of the time, it's just waste their time socializing and going to parties and playing football, whatever. If you really want to study physics, like if you may focus your attention and study it for 10 hours a day, reading like original works, whatever, and watching lectures, that's all. What are you going to do next if you study physics and biology and chemistry and understand it in depth? It's still like philosophy. I mean, science, you must say, why do you need to know that? Like, I'm not talking about like knowing science to the level when you are able to explain it to somebody else, when you are able to teach it. Since teaching, it's not like doing science. So doing science is basically you learn more. You find new content, you find new information, and you observe this information. You made it a part of your life. You made it a part of your stream of consciousness. You don't need to understand everything, but what you need to do is like to be able to well, you need to understand, but what counts as understanding? Is it like your ability to explain it to a child, or is it like when you pay attention and listen to something, and then while like doing this process you really understand what's going on, and then you probably apply it for your life? You may watch like these lectures by Andrew Huberman. I can't tell you everything what he said in these lectures, even though I dedicated like 20 hours or more like watching his lectures. But I may understand it. So whenever I was like present, when I was listening to his lecture, I didn't memorize anything, but I changed my behavior. So now, for example, I wake up at what's happened? Yeah, I wake up at 7, usually at 7, sometimes at 6, sometimes at 8 a.m. And I know how to uh, fall asleep at 11 p.m. or 12 p.m. Half a year ago, it was impossible for me. So half a year ago, I uh, woke up at 11 a.m. or at midday at the afternoon, and I couldn't fell asleep. I couldn't fall asleep till 3 a.m. And I learned something about sunlight, about my brain, how it works, about what was some cycles. I forgot, but yeah, I forgot words, but I apply it for my life, and I can understand it, and I can use it. But anyway, yeah, I need to get back to Nietzsche. Let's talk about the book. It seems that in order to inscribe themselves upon the heart of humanity, with everlasting claims, all great things have first to wonder about the earth as enormous and awe-inspiring caricatures. Dogmatic philosophy has been a caricature of this kind. For instance, the Vedanta doctrine in Asia and Platonism in Europe. All right. By the way, I want to emphasize that Nietzsche talks here about very serious stuff. I mean, if you go through Beyond Good and Evil a couple of times and think about it a couple of years, like between these times, or just a year, your perception of reality is gonna be changed, like in many ways. And you'll understand something that average people don't understand, and they have no chance to understand. And I can't even explain what it is. It's just you see reality, you see yourself, you see what's going on, like kind of you see through the things when you really think about what's going on here. It seems that in order to inscribe themselves upon the heart of humanity with everlasting claims, all great things have first to wonder about the earth as enormous and awe-inspiring caricatures. So enormous and awe-inspiring caricatures. So it's like he mocks astrology here. He continues mocking astrology. And he basically says that, at first Like science, for example, science is great according to Nietzsche. Nietzsche like loves science, but again, what kind of science? Like for him, there's no distinction. No, there's no clear distinction between science and philosophy, and it's not about facts. It's not about this sensualism or about what was known as modern science. It's more about thinking and like methods. So, like science, when you question your own beliefs, when you question your own ideas, when you continue studying, when you never stop at some point and say like, this is what I need, what I already know, and there's nothing more to learn, and therefore I go and teach people. So this knowledge. So you may spend 5 years at university studying language, and this is like what I see everywhere now. So people like spend 5 years at university studying language like English, and then they go and teach English. And you have a conversation with them, and they can speak. They know something about grammar or about pronunciation, and they have some one or two or three basic ideas which are constantly recurring in their minds, and they repeat these ideas using different linguistic forms. But they're so boring, and they can't tell you anything. They teach children the same shit. So they teach them, no, English, you have to learn grammar. You have to learn these 1,000 rules. And when you know these 1,000 rules, you know English. And it's like nonsense. But like you spend 5 years at university, and then like if you advise or suggest these people to study like some real stuff, so English, use it, study philosophy, study psychology, study physics, study math, study anything. Like, no, it's like, I want to make money, I want to teach children, I want to get whatever, I want to use my language. And like for these 5 years, I mean, this level which people have when they finish their university. So I got this level when I was like 2016, I guess. So it was the time when I was when I learned to understand language just by hearing, and I started writing my journal, and my grammar was terrible. I didn't care. I was just writing every day, one page, and listening to lectures. Like the first lectures were, I guess, in English, it was Jordan Peterson, and I couldn't understand him. Just he wasn't popular yet. It was the beginning of 2017, before his famous speech at the Canadian Senate. And I was like listening to his lectures, one lecture a day for a couple of days. Maps, I guess it was Maps of Meaning. No, it was Personality in its Transformation, 20 lectures. And I was listening a lecture a day. It was April 2017. I understood only 30%, but I knew by that time what is real learning. So it's not translating. So I knew that if I just sit down and listen for fucking hour, like this lecture, if I do it on a daily basis, I'll eventually get to the point when I will be able to understand. It doesn't mean that I'll be able to understand only by listening to lectures. Of course, I'll do lots of other things. I'll learn something. I'll go on the internet and do all sorts of activities. I'll try to think. I'll try to make sense of my, understanding of my perceptions, of my experience using English language, and gradually I'll build like this connection between my experience and what I actually listen to understand. And as I said, it's like listening, doing something. Then I learned to do that, and eventually I could understand. And I was thinking, wow, this is the level. Like now, almost nobody. And as I said, I was communicating with people who graduated from Kaluga State University, and as English teachers. And I had conversations with them, and I sensed that almost no one could really understand like what I was talking about. And I was talking about basically like what like lectures which I watched. They could understand my language, so they could understand what I was saying, but they couldn't understand the intention behind the language, and they couldn't like really grasp that what was real learning, what was real thinking. Since as I discovered this thinking, I basically told everybody about thinking like for hours. I was in English, just saying, man, like guys, we have to think in English. It's so powerful. Just for an hour, shut down your native language and try to think only in English for an hour. Like whatever is here, like don't worry about the grammar, don't worry about the content, just stream of consciousness. And people, yeah, but nobody actually did it. And then I realized that this level, like, yeah, I wouldn't say that my grammar was perfect or that my you know understanding was perfect, but still this level, it was the level which people usually have when they graduate from university. I like at the end of summer of 2017, I watched once again this course of lecture by Jordan Peterson. It was actually at the autumn, but before I watched a few other courses, like one course by Shelley Kagan, Philosophy of Death, and I could understand philosophy of death like fully. I mean, I was watching it and I understood everything what he was saying. And it was October 2017. And in November, I was watching once again Jordan Peterson's course of lectures, Maps of Meaning, 20 lectures, and I understood everything. I was so surprised. Like it took me half a year. So in April 2017, I was watching the course of lecture. I could understand only 30%. So just certain phrases and words, but no like big picture. And after half a year of studying language, thinking in English, like most of the time, reading, trying to write something like one page a day, my stream of consciousness. And after half a year, like such a result that I can see, like I can watch these lectures and understand everything. And then I realized like almost nobody can do that. So this is already the level which uh, graduate students, they never reach. And since that, I spent like 3 years studying in depth language almost every day, writing down my journals, developing my style, like learning to think more and reading books, watching like dozens courses of lectures like from Stanford, behavioral biology by Sapolsky, from Yale, this guy Shelley Kagan, I rewatched him once more, and another. There was Paul Bloom, lectures about psychology, 20 lectures. What was there? Robert Paul Wolff, lectures about Kant. Uh, he was from Princeton. I don't remember from where he was, but anyway, it was lectures on Kant, lectures on Marx, lectures on Freud. Uh, who was there? Daniel Bonovac. I remember I didn't watch like maybe half of his philosophical course of lecture. There's another guy who, you know, who was who had a strange body language and was waving his hands all the time. Forgot his name. Lectures on Nietzsche. Doesn't also it was like 3 years ago. I didn't pay substantial attention to his lectures, but anyway, just there was many other like from Harvard. I watched lectures by Michael Sandel, on justice. What was there? What else did I watch? There's much more. I mean, MIT, Levin, forgot his first name. Walter Levin, lectures on physics. Leonard Sakunt, lectures on another lectures on physics, but I didn't watch the course of lectures. Yeah, there were countless TED, like not TED Talks, but Google Talks. Oh, TED Talks as well. Google Talks and just lectures, kind of there's just one lecture, not a course of lectures, but just one lecture. And these like an hour, 2 hour long lectures, it's basically, I can't even tell. But I was right, like if now I want to really count and create a video to tell you this like journey which I had by watching different courses of lecture. So I may basically take my journals and establish it, or I might just take the history of my YouTube. I mean, it's so here as well, and yeah, hundreds of different lectures. And what I was talking about, caricatures. Yeah, I guess Yeah, I already lost the track of my thought, but now let's get back to Nietzsche. It seems that in order to inscribe themselves upon the heart of humanity with everlasting claims, all great things have first. Yeah, I was talking about language, and I was talking about, yeah, I just found the thought. Yeah, it's really sad to see this state of affairs when people study at university and then they go and teach other people. Basically, they don't teach anything; they just make money, so make their living by reading textbooks or telling some shit which they memorized at university, some principles which never work by themselves. So these principles, when you have experience, and now I have a lot of experience of studying language, and I study grammar as well and pronunciation, and it all works for me since I have experience. I may apply these principles and transform gradually my experience. But when you want to learn principles without experience, when you don't have any substance, any basis, it usually doesn't work. And then when it works, you create another teacher who is, who has few textbooks downloaded in their heads, and then they go and read you, like tell you everything about these textbooks, which make no sense outside of this all experience of studying. It's actually no. Oh, I know a lot about studying, but uh, I don't want to waste my time to teach people. So this is the process. So if I have to teach, for example, I could be probably a teacher, and it's not a big deal. But I know that it's like wasting my time. I really want to learn. I don't want to teach. I want to learn, and I know that there's like infinite amount of stuff which I can learn, and that's what I'm doing. I'm learning, and simultaneously, of course, I'm teaching. Since you may watch this video and you may like have a glimpse what it means to really to study something, and you may just copy me, imitate the way how I do philosophy. So you may do the same, like studying stream, recording everything, like recording your stream of consciousness and talking about stuff that you understand and you really want to know. See, it maybe not necessarily like some philosophy, maybe something that you really like. You may be passionate about biology or chemistry or math. So what you do, you take famous books on math, some whatever, Poincaré, who was like Fermat, Pascal, whatever. You take a book, uh, and you Bertrand Russell, Principles of Mathematics. I actually read this book as well, like a year and a half ago. You take a book and you go slowly analyzing everything was written in this book and talking about it and comparing like your stream of consciousness with what you are reading. And now you may do the same with, if you don't like reading, you may take a lecture on YouTube. Like you may take any lecture, like for example, you want to study something about your brain. You take Andrew Huberman, you start listening to him. After each sentence, you pause and you try to analyze what he actually said. Or you listen for 10 minutes, then you pause and you talk for an hour. So it's like communication. So you see, studying language or studying philosophy, you may say, oh no, it's impossible to communicate with computer. So you have to have a human connection. You have to have a human being. No, you don't have. It's all nonsense. So you may have a real communication. Just, I may show you. Let's just play it. So I take this lecture.
Right situation to do a particular.
So let's take this, just at random. Let's take somewhere here. So I just listen.
That involve inversions and a lot of lateral movement, actual sports, jumping, diving, rolling, these kinds of things, gymnastics type stuff. Why the vestibular system to access plasticity? Well, we have a hardwired system for balance. And here's how it works in as simple terms as I can possibly come up with. As we move through space, or even if we're stationary, there are really three main planes of movement. Now, I realize some people are just listening to this, so I'm going to do this for both the folks that are just listening and for those of you that are watching the video. So there are three main modes of movement. And it turns out that your brain doesn't really know where your body is, except through that proprioceptive feedback. The main way it knows is through three planes of movement that we call pitch, which is like nodding. So if I nod like this, that's pitch. Then there's yaw, which is side to side, which is like shaking my head no. And then there's roll from side to side, like when a puppy looks at you like,
Pitch, yaw, and roll. So see now, it's like I have a conversation with this guy. So I just listen to what he says. Now I try to analyze. So he talks about three ways of movement. Pitch, which is okay, and already, which is like this. No, this is pitch. This is yaw, and this is roll. What was? Yeah, I may just
then there's yaw, which is
yaw.
side to side,
Okay,
which
side
is
to
like
side.
no. And then
And
there's roll from side to side.
roll. Okay, roll from side to side. So this is real communication. I listen to him, and now I try to understand what he is saying. So I try, okay, this is yaw, this is roll, this is pitch. Three ways of movement, and they relate to neuroplasticity. So whenever your body, and he probably will going to say next about this balance. So how your brain actually perceives the reality when you move through the space, and he's going to talk about you have to have certain like imbalance to like your brain. Like neuroplasticity occurs when your body is out of balance, and to bring it back to balance, like your brain just release certain chemicals, and you have to use these chemicals. Like you may use these chemicals to boost your neuroplasticity. And this lecture actually helped me a lot to understand. Yeah, and like I'm continuing talking about it. So this lecture helped me a lot to understand certain experience which I had. I used to record my videos, like walking and talking, just going around the street and talking to the camera in English and practicing my English by doing this exercise. And I used to do that while walking on the railroad. So I just stepped at the railroad, and I was like keeping balance, trying to talk, record myself on the camera, and simultaneously to go on the railroad without falling from the line, and maintaining this balance. And it was so powerful. I had extremely powerful experience, and it helped me to figure out something that I couldn't figure out before about like not just some ideas, but also like it made me feel different. And then when I watched this lecture, I realized, wow, he describes exactly what was going on, how I boosted this neuroplasticity by doing this exercise. And for me, it was kind of intuitive. So I never really thought that it was possible to improve my studying and my some cognitive exercises by just doing something, like doing some physical movements and exercises simultaneously, like studying in a movement, studying in a when you go somewhere, like studying not by sitting and reading something, but by walking and talking, and maintaining a special way of walking. And when I learned, like, oh wow, that was really amazing. And by the way, I want to say, like, this is real communication. So you watch a lecture, you talk about it, you watch a lecture. So if you don't like to read, you may just take one of the lectures which you like, or any videos, how-to videos, whatever you want to learn. You may watch from the beginning. Of course, now I just wanted to give you an example how to do that. But actually, you learn on your own. So you go, you watch it, you talk about it for 1, 2, 3, 5 minutes. Even if you can't really say anything, you just force yourself to maintain a meaningful conversation with the person whom you see on the internet. It's hard. There's no, like, you may say, oh, there's no feedback. How do I really know whether or not I'm going to say something true? Use your mind. Your mind will tell you what's really true, what's not, and do you really learn or not. So there's no, like, feedback isn't necessary. It's necessary to some degree when you're a child, but when you grow older, when you already can understand and like what's going on, when you can use language, and when you have some developed intelligence, your intelligence will help you. Don't rely on people and communication, rely on your intelligence. Anyway, it seems that I'm just reading this the third time. Okay, Dogmatic Philosophy. Let's just read this paragraph once again. the sentence. The sentence looks like a paragraph. It seems that in order to inscribe themselves upon the heart of humanity with everlasting claims, all great things have first to wander about the earth as enormous and awe-inspiring caricatures. Dogmatic philosophy has been a caricature of this kind. For instance, the Vedanta doctrine in Asia and Platonism in Europe. So this is actually the sentence. So if you want to say that all these dogmatic philosophers, and he calls them, let's like use his name. So dogmatic philosophy has been a caricature of this kind. And he says that Vedanta doctrine in Asia and Platonism in Europe, which were like both probably centered on immortal soul. Before he says like subject, so he says ego superstition or soul superstition. And Platonism was like, it was one of the main ideas of Platonism, that you have immortal soul, and when you die, you actually, you do not die. So your soul is immortal, your body is just flesh. Focus on your immortal soul, and it's all about forms and this Platonic forms about ideas. And yeah, and Nietzsche, like later, he's going to talk about this distinction, this dichotomy between life and death, which is like Platonism for him. It's kind of death philosophy. So you renounce life. So you say life is not important. Like what's going on here is not important. What's really important is something beyond life. And to get to this beyond, you have to follow certain principles, which Plato outlines for you. And Platonism for him, it's also Christianity, which he's going to say later. But the idea, like he wants to criticize here, like he mocks basically Vedanta doctrine in Asia and Platonism in Europe, which is like philosophy, European philosophy, and Asian philosophy. He wants to say it's like astrology. So we are going to develop real science, but before that, we have to get rid of these dogmatic philosophies, since they make us think, like they spoil our thinking, they spoil our perception. They don't allow us to see what's really going on. They are not like, they have no real basis, and all dogmatizing is just useless. So if you teach something, you have to understand that there must be some degree of freedom. So you may teach math, for example. Math, there are some certainties in math, right? Some knowledge, so you can deny it. You can say, like, if again, analytic statements and synthetic statements, syntactic, whatever. There are certainties. There are some. So, but is math dogmatic? No, it just tells you certain principles which we developed, and they're not even real. So it's all about language. So math and language and logic, it's different domain, and we may agree upon them, but we may use different language, and but we can develop different math, right? So if there's 2 + 2 = 4 equals 4, we can't. Well, we can develop a math where 2 + 2 is going to be 22, right? And but this math is probably not going to work. But no, if you develop it for yourself, it maybe it may work, but there's going to be different principles, right? And you may use them, but they'll probably, you can say that they're universal, since math is universal. So 1 + 1, you use different words, but the idea that there's like two things, and when they're joined, there's like they are individual things, they are joined, there's two things. Well, it's like, okay, seems I'm like today I'm kind of, I'm trying to talk about something that I don't fully understand. It makes me feel embarrassed and confused, and I don't like this feeling. That's why I'm not gonna go in this direction. Just want to say once again about Platonism in Europe and Vedanta doctrine in Asia. So for Nietzsche, it's all, he basically compares these dogmatic philosophies with astrology, and says that like they're promising in terms of something will grow out of them, but what they're right now, it's something that has not yet ceased doing mischief to humanity as as a whole. So we're spending our time like uselessly. Okay, so it seems I have to take a break. Like my language, yeah, my cognitive abilities. Just I see that it's yeah, I'm talking too much, and maybe it's not necessary. So I'm going to read this book slowly, and each time when I take this studying stream, so for me, I'm going to try to work in kind of at the highest. See, I can't even say anything for 1 minute. I'm just trying to formulate a thought, and I can't put it in language. That's so terrible. I'm already exhausted, and I see. I wouldn't say I'm tired, but I see that I can't really be consistent in my speech, and I don't want to continue now. So it's gonna get worse, and I already sense this. I need to do something else, and today's for today is enough. But this is the way how I'm going to approach this book. So just take it, try to read it for try to understand it, talk about what's going on. And when I feel tired, I'm not going to continue. I'm just stop it, and next time I record another stream starting from this place. And by the way, uh, I want to say that next time, whenever it's going to be today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, I'm going to memorize this part as well. And I start the third stream from reciting from my memory, like all this part. So I'm going to read it from my memory, and I'm going to think about it as well to make the next stream more meaningful. So, and that's all, I guess, for today. Yeah, it was like yesterday I felt better. Definitely my perception of what was going on yesterday, certainly, like if we measure it on a scale from 1 to 10, today it was kind of 3 or 4, whereas yesterday it was like 7. Not all, like at the beginning it was like slowly, but at the middle point when I start talking about real thinking, it was really fascinating. And all these 3 hours were like, most of these 3 hours I felt very good. But this today it was mostly like I couldn't actually make sense of the reading, and I talked a lot about unrelated things. So I want to make it more clear and talk about the book, trying to really use my experience to describe what's going on in the book instead of talking about my personal experience, which may be totally unrelated. Well, in some senses related to the book. I can't talk about anything unrelated. I may just start talking about one thing, and then I may discover something else is maybe more important for me at this present moment, and I may bring it up and discuss it for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, since it's not my goal to talk only about the philosophy. It's like studying stream. I try to study. What I'm trying to study here. It's not even the Nietzsche book. It's my stream of consciousness. I'm trying to study what's going to appear on my mental horizon when I look at this book and trying to make sense of what's written here. But anyway, that's all for today. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.